Good night, Bahamas. Good night. Good night. Just a short podcast tonight. I'm actually preparing now to have a conversation with the Bahamian people. Country is in crisis. In case you may not be aware of what is happening, it is truly a financial crisis that we're having, an economic crisis. To give you a summary of where we are, to be exact, is that we began a COVID, this COVID crisis. For those that from Grand Bahama and other places, you would know that we began our experience on September 1st. We are moving into the 1-year anniversary, and that I'm going to talk to you in regards to 1 year later. Where are we? But when you begin to look at what we are having here in the Bahamas, immediately following that, about 7 months, 8 months later, we move into what is called the pandemic phase of the Bahamas. And that began on the 17th of March. There's some dates on this that is very relevant for us to understand the perspective of where we are. Dorian gave us a tremendous blow. It literally took away 5 billion or more from the economy. And how did I derive at that? You know, oftentimes it's very simple. I'm not going to go into details to cloud it out, but it's very simple to understand. Let's pretend I own a fried chicken place, and a fire comes and destroys the building that I own. You would often hear people say, well, that's a shame that his business burned down because it affects the economy, the GDP of the economy. What is the GDP of that economy from that fried chicken place I had? Well, the GDP would be the salaries that I paid and the profits that I would have made during that year. And oftentimes you'll hear the government say, oh, we lose $3 billion or whatever in GDP impact that came from Hurricane Dorian. Okay, that's fine. But for you to understand what exactly is the real impact, you must ask yourself, if the chicken place I had contributed the $3 billion to the GDP, then what happened when you say the GDP disappears? Something that generated the GDP also disappeared. So oftentimes we would say, okay, the GDP disappeared, $5 billion, $3 billion. But we don't look at what was generating that GDP was also destroyed. So yes, the GDP went, which is an expectation from government standpoint that they would be able to tax. But what would my building for the people to come back to work? So when we hear the Grand Bahama economy and the Abaco economy and the GDP is $3 billion, that is the GDP that disappears because the infrastructure that generates that GDP disappeared. And so the question is, what is the value of that infrastructure needed to generate that GDP? So as in my chicken place, I may have been given out $3 billion in salaries and profit. But when the whole building burns down, more than just the GDP disappears. The whole building that generates the GDP also disappears. So the question is, what is the value of that building that is needed to regenerate that GDP? And that's what we have to look at. And so you could estimate very easily at least $5 billion of the GDP generating mechanism disappeared. So we don't get it confused. The GDP disappeared because the GDP generating mechanism disappeared. Okay, now it's very easy to understand that, because you could just move forward from the hurricane into June, and you could anticipate that the government itself began to give you these figures. And let's use an example. If the GDP of the entire Bahamas is $12 billion, and the government has an expectation of $3 billion in taxes to run the country, we could very easily conclude that the government expect to collect on average, collection of taxes, revenue, whatever you want to call it, is 25%, because we have a $12 billion GDP. A 25% of that $12 billion GDP is $3 billion. So the government expects to collect $3 billion. Okay, what happened in June? In June, the Minister of Finance came into the House of Assembly and automatically said, we are starting at negative 1.3 billion. Okay, good. If the government expected to collect $3 billion and we're starting at negative $1.3 billion, we could then assume that that 1.3 billion comes from the 25%. So how did we end up at the 1.3 billion? You'd simply times that by 4 and end up at 5.2 billion, which gives you the $1.2 billion, $1.3 billion that we're going to be short. So in essence, the only way you could be $1.3 billion short is if your economy is not generating $5.2 billion in revenue that you need to tax. Plain and simple. So we have to ask ourselves, okay, well, where did that revenue went? It disappeared because of the hurricane and other cascading effect. Now, here's our problem. That would have been an ideal situation if we borrowed the 1.3 billion on July 1st, the government begins. But then we have to factor in COVID. And what has COVID done? Okay, good. Let's say they factored in COVID right up to July 1st. But now here's the problem. If we started out with 1.3 billion, let's round it down for the sake of mathematics. Let's go to 1.2 billion. So that means that we are borrowing $100 million per month. Okay, good. So that means that if we are borrowing $100 million a month and we expect to collect $3 billion, then essentially we expected to collect $250 million a month in revenue. We said we're going to be $100 billion short. That means that we expected to collect $150 a month, even in the crisis situation. Now, what happened? What happened on July 1st? The economy attempted to open and it immediately closed. In the newspapers, it says that we have lost 100% of the tourism dollars that's coming into the country, which is about 70% of the revenues coming into the country. And that's very easy. You heard the Minister of Finance once again said, our revenues down 70%. Okay, good. Since we were already $100 million short, so we basically had an expectation of $150 a month in revenue. If we're 70% short in that, so that means that instead of collecting $150 million, we've only collected around $45 million. So in essence, we have the $100 million plus we have the $45 million we collect. But mind you, we need $250 million to run the country. So automatically, we are $105 million short for that amount of time. Okay, good. So we're close in July, August. We're going to be close in September and October. We'll be lucky if we even back before January. So let's write it off as 6 months. So again, 6 months times $105 million a month, if all things remain constant, that would give us another deficit of $600 million. That means we began in January this year, out of a $3 billion budget for running the government, we would have started. That means that we're going to start out at negative $2 billion. Now, let's look at what has been happening on a monthly basis. Bahamas has not been making any money. None of our corporations have been making any money. So in essence, we've been paying out hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever amount we pay out every month, $250 million a month for lack of productivity. Now, here's the scary part. Pay attention to this. The mere fact that we only collected the $45 million and we borrowed the $100 million, but we're still spending $250 million. Now, I just showed you where we shot 100 million. So technically, we only operate on 145 million. So we're still spending $250 million a month. Say all things remain constant. Forget adding the money that Bahamas Air needs in these crisis situations. Let's pretend we're just missing the money. So what's happened? So we are now paying $250 million a month in expenses. We got the $100 million a month we borrow, plus we have the $45 million in revenue that's coming in. That creates a crisis situation because our needs begin to increase exponentially. So essentially, we have now can look to see that we are facing an imminent crisis. Now I'm going to come back in a few minutes and show you why the government opened the economy, okay? In spite of anything and why they rushed. This is why, if you understand, you'd understand this is why the government tried to rush and open the economy on July 1st. Yeah, I don't care what the spin doctor says and blaming Bahamians and whatever else. If you remember, when the economy opened, you had the Director General of Tourism saying, go to Miami, spend the money, and so we could collect the taxes. You had that's what they expected you to do. They expected you to go and shop so they could collect revenue from taxes coming back into the country. Because surely we did not have any revenue coming in from the tourist dollars. So don't accept blame and the trolls running around screaming at you talking about you caused this. No. If you tell your children to go play in the yard and they come back inside the house with lice or scabies, you can't blame them saying that, oh, they went and played in the yard. You told them to go play in the yard. And so what we have to do is we have to exercise and understand that judgment is based on leadership. And leadership makes the decision on what do we do and how we do it. So don't allow leadership don't pass blame. Leadership accept responsibility. Now, coming back to the fact that now we're short of this $100 million a month coming in. So by December, we'll be short another $600 million, giving us a deficit of $2 billion. So then if we continue, all things remain the same, the economy doesn't open, we will lead into the entire year with a deficit of $2.5 billion out of a $3 billion bill. That means we have to borrow at least another $1 billion just to cover this year. And then we have to find out what we're going to be short going into the next year. Okay? So I'm not going to get into the argument about them borrowing $4 billion because there's a slight variation in that. But now I just want you to understand. So here it is, if all things remain constant, we're not going to count the impact of people being evicted from homes and mortgages being foreclosed and a social safety net that is going to be needed. We're just looking at the economics of it. Basically, we would have collected about $600 billion, let me say $45 million a month times 12, 450 plus 2, $600 million. So basically, let's round it off that some things can come up, you know, giving away little gifts here and there and everything. So we're going to be short out of a $3 billion budget. We would only had $500 million in revenue, just for the sake of making it very simple. So that means our total deficit for this year, it will start at $2.5 billion. That's as simple as it is. I say it's going to get worse than that. Now, let's go back to as to what happened when they originally ran to open up the economy in July 1st. Yes, blame the Bahamian people for something you told them to do. You were the one who said that you were running this on data. Remember what they said? Data, they were making the competent authorities, it was making decisions based on data and everything else. It's funny, Ro, right? Because remember last week they came back and said, I'm sorry, we wasn't using data, we was using pen and paper. So that means your pen and paper calculation was inadequate going back for when you said you did it. Okay, now let's move forward. And this is the scary part. I want you people to pay attention to this because this could very easily mean that we have bankrupt, we're on the verge of bankrupt. And the reason I'm doing this video, and I'm going to begin to have a conversation, the future of everything, because solving the crisis we have is easy. And in fact, before I go back to telling you about what happened, let me just explain to you what happens. For those of you that know me, you've heard me for almost 20 years continuously make the argument. I want you to listen very carefully to this. Let me just come a little closer. Listen very carefully to this. For 20 years, you've heard me make the argument that the Bahamas is the most digitally prepared country in the world. And a lot of people may not understand what I was saying at the time. In December last year, or was it the year before last, it was in the newspaper, it says that the Bahamas was the second most digitally prepared in the world. And I want you guys to pay attention to the word digitally prepared. This is going to be very important for the redevelopment of our country. The word digitally prepared doesn't mean utilization. It means that you have this infrastructure, the environment, whatever, for which digitization and digitalization could grow, okay? So the Bahamas is being the most digitally prepared country in the world. Do you know that Freeport, not Grand Bahama, Freeport, if treated as a country, would be number 2 in the world? Imagine that. So we have the number 1 country in the world and the number 2 country in the world called Grand Bahama. That's the most digitally prepared. Now, how does the word work for digitally prepared? When I was talking 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I wasn't talking about the present. Digital preparedness means for when the world became digital, we would be the most prepared to take advantage of it. Now, the world itself today has become digital. In fact, the world is moving at the rate of digitization at the rate of 1 year every month. And so many of you would consider me more advanced than the typical person in the Bahamas. Well, guess what? Do you realize that beginning in January of this year, everything I knew about technology practically shifted, almost in the sense of how I knew it no longer existed. So I want you to understand that. So when we have conversations about current technology, it doesn't exist except amongst us. Because everything I knew about talking 5 years into the future disappeared, because technology catapulted us 10 years into the future practically, and we're just kind of adjusting our way. Now, experts in the Bahamas and other places would tell you the Bahamas was 10 years behind in technology, meaning in 2020, the Bahamas was in 2010, in spite of being digitally prepared. So here it is, the world has now catapulted itself to 2030, and we're still struggling with 2010 technology. And you hear it in the people talking, you hear the Economic Recovery Committee, people on the committee just joking about not being digitally literate and their grandkids. And so here it is that you have these people on this committee who's saying, admittedly, they're ill prepared digitally to see and to think digitally on how to build an economy. So here it is, we're trying to build a rebuild, a pre-21st century Bahamas, when the world has moved to 2030. Now, it comes back to the digital preparedness of the country. If the world has went digital and they're strapping and fighting to embrace digitization, didn't I tell you we were already prepared? We don't have to go get ready. We are already here. Simple as that. I love the fact that the Prime Minister adopted some positions I've been promoting to you for years. The green economy, the blue economy, the orange economy, the conceptual economy, the knowledge economy, and the digital economy, which is a small d, is all built on the global digital economy, which is the big D. Now, people will use these terms and throw it around. Oh, conceptual economy, digital economy, knowledge economy, orange economy. But these are not Google words. Yes, to get an understanding of what they are, but to understand how to utilize them is like having a surgeon. Okay, and I often use this analogy of somebody with heart problems. You could get hundreds of doctors who can tell you what to do. Okay, they can tell you, oh, you need to have a heart surgery, you need to do this, whatever. Hundreds of doctors. Only a small group within those hundreds of doctors can tell you how to do it. But guess what? Even amongst those small doctors who can tell you how to do it, there may only be 1, 2, or 3 that can actually do it. Now let's use an example of the heart surgery. I'm having a heart problems. 100 doctors can tell me exactly what I need to have done. 25 of them can tell me what needs to be done. Now, may they tell me what needs to be done, can tell me how to do it. 100 will tell me what needs to be done. 25 will tell me how to be done. But guess what? You only have about 2 people in the country who can actually do it. Dwayne Sands and maybe another person. You see that analogy? So we can have 100 people talking about what needs to be done. A small group will tell you how to do it, and even a smaller group will be capable of executing it. We must find those groups of people who can execute. Okay? Now it comes back to digital preparedness. So here it is, the world is trying to become digitally prepared. The Bahamas has been for at least 3 decades. Now, you've heard me talk about the second digital revolution, the third technology revolution, the fourth industrial revolution, and now COVID has brought about the fifth social revolution. Many of you have heard me use the term the fifth social revolution for years. You didn't understand. My concept of the fifth social revolution was the way technology, 5G, artificial intelligence, virtualization, augmented reality would have changed the way we interact with each other. Well, COVID has done that. You see people using Facebook and Zoom and all these other different platforms, Skype and whatever, that never used it before. We are no longer physically touching each other. So basically the world is being redefined in the fifth social revolution. So here it is this time. And I want you to understand, in 1992 began what is called the first digital revolution. In 2017, that period began to end. And so now we are in the second digital revolution. So that would mean, at minimum, when the world became digital in 1992, we did nothing. We celebrate the building of plantations, Atlantis and Grand Bahama, Alokaya, and all these things. We've been celebrating plantation. From 2002 or whatever, the Progressive Liberal Party began working on the next mega plantation called Bahama. And we spent a decade trying to bring that plantation to life while ignoring the digital revolution and being the most prepared country in the world. Madness. So what it says now, as the world becomes digital, everything we know about tourism, everything we know about banking, everything we know about services and whatever it is we provide, even fishing, even agriculture, has changed. I see us going back to the field. What do you mean we're going to do backyard farming? Yes, we can do backyard farming if it's going to use technology where you have tiers of a farm, what they call vertical farming, where you could yield 20 times what you do. But clearly you can't be talking about a pot on the ground. And so this is where we begin to use these so-called technology. We used to use these terms, and you don't go back to backyard farming. You put in some vertical farms in a backyard and increase your yield, increase your production using technology. Not sand, and I see government handing out seeds and shovel, and I'm going, are we serious? Okay, so we have to go to agri-tech. Agriculture's changed. I hear them talk about BAMSI. Listen to me, please. BAMSI is food sovereignty. BAMSI is not food security. Okay, they got it all wrong. I don't care what you dress it up, but I'm going to have these conversations in individual sec for you to understand. There's a difference between food sovereignty and food security. And if you don't understand, you can't build it. You can't get it right. Food security is the method of being able to feed your country for 6 months, a year, or whatever amount of time, should your supply of imports or whatever get cut off. That's food security. You can have food security using food sovereignty, where you produce what you eat. Okay? So the problem is that our leadership and those aspirants don't seem to understand the 21st century. And we've been allowing them to get away with it. But my job is to talk to you about the future of everything, because we must adjust, and we must adjust fast. The amazing thing that you guys will understand as I begin to further down these conversations over the next coming of weeks, you will understand where this is a unique opportunity for Bahamians to own their economy. I'm talking about a few thousand millionaires. Yes, a few thousand millionaires. I'm talking about personal financial security in families. We're only talking about 125, 150,000 families, even if you count the foreigners. This is achievable. It's very small. Just type in. We already say we're making $60,000 a year per person, according to the GDP of every working person. So then why is it now we can't own the economy and have $150,000 a year coming into every house, because we're going to expand the economy? And it's possible if you understand. It's not instant, but neither is planting a seed. But you can't reap what you don't sow. And so we can't sow old ideas. We must sow new ideas to reap better going forward. We can own the tourism economy. We need about 60,000 bed and breakfast in this town. Forget the hotel rooms. Once we get to where we are, I'm going to talk to you about the new dispensation of what tourism will become. Not tourism, hospitality. Because this tourism product was a one-horse pony. In a hospitality industry based by revenue, it's the 10th largest in the world. And I hear people talk about, oh, we need to diversify out of tourism. They have no understanding that we should be diversifying into tourism. Just because you had 1 foot in the door and they allowed 100 feet, you now saying, oh, the 1 foot didn't work, so we now have to withdraw. You don't. You got medical tourism, sports tourism, health tourism. And health tourism is different than medical tourism. You have agriculture tourism, you have ecotourism, cultural, heritage. All of these is a whole new dispensation to bring in another 1 million, 2 million people. But when these people coming into the Bahamas, we should own the platforms for which they will have to utilize. And so how is it unrealistic to have 50,000 families own the homes and the businesses for what these people will have to enjoy? But it requires 21st century thinking. It requires innovation. It requires digital transformation. You should look at those two words they use all the time. Innovation is not copying somebody, it's creating something new. The way you do things today, you do it in a whole new way. Remember how you had to get up and change the TV? Then somebody came up with the idea that you could have this wire that runs to the TV, and they call it a remote control. And somebody else came and said, why we can't do that wireless? And then how it's improved again upon it. That's innovation. And digital transformation is totally something different than what these people are talking about. And so, yes, we may use them as buzzwords, but we have to implement them correctly. And we need to understand the language of how it is done. But because you do not speak the language, then you have the problem. So I'm simply saying just let's try our best to basically put people in the front of the camera, people, whatever it is, that actually know what we're talking about, not screaming out buzzwords and we're going to own the economy and we're going to do this and we can do whatever, but they're incapable of telling you how. There's plenty of what's, and you have a lot of political parties telling you what they're going to do, but they're not going to tell you how, nor will they be able to tell you who can execute it. And I invite you to please share the video, because I want us to have the conversation. If you have questions, I want you to hit me up. Right to the bottom there, AlanCjohnson.com gives you all of my profile, my WhatsApp numbers, and everything else that you can send me what you want me to talk about. Now, so again, I get something off track, but so let's go back to why the government had to open up the economy. Hopefully I didn't lose too many of y'all, but sometimes I have so much on my mind in talking. But here's the problem you have, right? Let me just do something here. Okay, here's the problem, the problems that we have. The government, going back to July 1st, they opened up the economy, it failed miserably. You see the catastrophic response we got with the COVID. Now, let's go back now to moving forward. In March 17th, the government began a lockdown. Now, here's what kicks in. What kicks in is labor law, okay? Atlantis sent people home because they were shut down. Bahamas sent people home. The other hotels sent people home. What is it, One Bay Street, The Point, and all everybody sent people home. The minute those people was let go, the 12-week law kicked in. It says that you can't furlough a person for more than 12 weeks. You have to bring them back to work or make the position redundant. Now, I want you to pay attention to that, because that 12-week from March 17 brings you to June 2nd. Okay? So you saw where the government had what the place name NIB begin to give you 12 weeks in compensation. Now, everybody didn't get on the 12 weeks at the same time, but I'm talking about the majority of the people for you to understand exactly what happened. National insurance could only give benefits for 12 weeks in any 12-month cycle. Okay, that would mean for the whole 12 weeks, expired on June 2nd for most people. A couple of people were stragglers who made late in applying, okay? So we're talking about the majority of the population, 40,000, 50,000, 60,000 people. The government then also came up with a program to be implemented through national insurance, which they give the money, that give those individuals that wasn't covered by national insurance, they give them 12 weeks. Let's say that expired at the same time, June 2nd. Now here's what happens. The government, I still don't know, I'm still trying to understand the legality of what the government did. The government got national insurance to implement a second 12 weeks, okay? Which basically violated the whole actuary of the agreement that they had. So now when does that second 12 weeks expire? That second 12 week expired August 25th, okay? Now pay attention to this. The government was so busy with lock them up, set them free, lock them up, set them free, that somehow they began to overlook the second deadline of the second 12 weeks that's coming. Individuals such as myself sound the alarm. A lot of people maybe thought, oh, we was just screaming and making noise. No, we were sounding alarm. Be glad they woke up, because go and watch. The government had a press conference on the 24th, opening the economy, semi-opening the economy or removing restrictions beginning on the 25th. Had they not done that, they would have had to extend it maybe another 12 weeks, for which you heard National Insurance said, if they do this, they will bankrupt National Insurance. Because National Insurance was never designed for the volume of individuals that is left unemployed at the same time. Imagine that National Insurance expect a few thousand people unemployed, but National Insurance never expect 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 people to all become unemployed at the same time, that they have to pay this benefit. That is not part of an actuary. It should have been, but that's not part of an actuary. I'm sure going forward into the future, we will now have that conversation as to what exactly is going to happen. So now that we come to this so-called actuary type science. So now the government itself is going to have funds. So the government doesn't give any more money. So now for those of y'all who say, Menace ran and locked us down, and then it became relevant to him that he woke up to, wait a minute, we're going to have to come up with another program. So a lot of people come with their own ideas that he was scared of this group and scared of that group and scared of whatever, and he made a mistake and whatever. But he had to admit that there's no data to support his position when you bought Regis, what her name is, Regis back, right? But we have to pay attention to this, because what the government is basically saying is that they're running an analog system that requires data, requires analytics to track 400,000 people. So we're in trouble from the health type environment. You know, the Minister Renwood Wells, you know, remember he used to talk a lot of technology for almost a decade, technology this and this and that. Now he's telling you to pray to God that something happens. But you know what they say, what God says, you could pray to win the lottery, but he can't make you win the lottery unless you buy a ticket. So that tells you there has to be some action. So hopefully he's telling you to pray for whatever success that on the action that is going to be taken. But here it is that now we are at the 25 weeks. So the government opened up and then give a date for September 1st, basically, or second, whatever, that's first. And they're now going into saying, okay, I hope that they start calling people back to work. But what the government did was kind of put the hotels and the hotels and other people let people off in kind of a precarious situation. They can't open, and they're trying to make a decision. Do they have a right to fire people or no, furlough them or make the positions redundant? Now, hopefully these businesses have taken the opportunity to rethink and redesign how their new economic model come up. I would say to you that most businesses don't. And I'm going to talk to what business people needs to do for this new normal from my perspective, owning Sand Dollar Business Solutions, a digital transformation advisory company telling businesses and individuals how to prepare. I'm going to also talk about how to take advantages of these opportunities around the world. Now, just for those of you who may not understand, there is no longer a border in the Bahamas. Yes, for the sake of immigration. I'm talking about a border in regard to global economics. There is no more border, okay? This is a brand new world. And this is an opportunity for you to rethink your skill set, rethink what you used to do, and develop what is called an ownership mindset. This is time not only for us to have the fifth social revolution, this is time for us to embrace a new social contract between our government and its people. The first social contract was only half fulfilled. We got supposedly independence. We're going to go all the way on this independence thing. We can come back and talk on that. And the second part of that was so we got political independence. And the second part of that was financial independence. We have not gotten financial independence yet. So now we have an opportunity to invoke a second social contract that brings ownership to the table. And this is what we have to look at these political leaders going forward, is that they have to, we don't want the blame game about who put us in debt the most. That's like having an argument about who built the deepest hole for me to be buried in. I now want to find out who's going to bring the best ladder for our success. And that's the conversation we have to have. Forget what you want to say, the PLP did this, the FNM do this. Don't get caught up in that. Because now you're talking about yesterday. We know where we are, screwed, okay? We know who got us here, the twin drivers. The question is, where do we go now? Which now and which next? Please, Bahamians, you are in financial trouble. Forget this conversation that we're having. You know the conversation we're having? We're having a conversation where individuals are having us play the blame game on their behalf. Do not let us get caught in that. We do not want to get into the PLP fault, the F&M fault. And so for the DNA, we passed that. Tell us where we need to go. Tell us how we're going to get there, and tell us who's going to be driving. PLP, if you want to become other than government and waiting, you're waiting to be government. We need you to act as government and waiting, meaning to bring your ideas, whatever it takes for us to rebuild this new economy going forward. Ignore what the F&M is doing. If you say they are not an option, then you act like the option. That's all. No one can tell us what the F&M has done for the last 3 years. We lived it. Okay? And unless there's a miracle comes out of the F&M and they continue doing what they're doing, we will see the consequences of that action. So we must prepare for a post-COVID, which may also mean a post-F&M. But we cannot allow for the fact that we want the F&M to be gone, that we are simply going to give somebody carte blanche to come back in and do as they feel. Bring us your plan. We need to see a vision for New Bahamas that reflects the 21st century digital reality the world is now in. Okay? Don't come back with jobs, just over broke suckers in a just over broke system. JOBS. Do not allow them to come back talking about they're going to do jobs. There's going to need some jobs, right? But do not let them come with the concept that you're going to look forward to a job. You're going to look forward to ownership. Because if jobs going to be created, that means it has to come from businesses. Why can't you own those businesses? We're going to talk about how to get financing for those. The digitization of the Bahamas and the wealth of the Bahamas gives you more than enough money for us in the modern, and literally within 2 or 3 years, to retire our national debt and literally live a better method of life. If we miss this opportunity, it'll probably be another 100 years before we have an opportunity to correct the mistakes we make over the next 2 years. So let's lay down the sword. See right here? Oh, right over here. Alliance for Change. Okay? And there's some signs there, right, for you to see. It's like a plus sign, a negative sign, right, and a multiplication. And what it means is that we'll add what's necessary, take away the unnecessary, multiply the good, there'll be no division, equal a better Bahamas. We're going to change the Bahamas. And so the point is that we want it now in the new economy, nothing for us without us going forward in the new Bahamas. Now, it requires us to devoid ourselves of the political thoughts. There is no F&M, there is no PLP, and there is no DNA going forward. There's ideas. In the digital reality we're in, ideas multiply money. Data is the currency of the future. No, the currency of the present. And ideas is the multiplier. So we're going to work on magnifying those ideas that's within each of all of us. And if you don't know what it is, those of us that has the ability to have foresight and insight will help you come to recognize it. The pulpit pimps, if they don't know, they say they talk to God. So don't let them, I mean, with all due respect, a lot of reverends in this country has become motivational speakers. They motivate you. God has something for you. Notice the prophet never says something. He tells you exactly what God has said to them. Not something that he's going to do something and you scream to an audience of a couple hundred people, I feel someone in here is going to get a promotion. I would love for you to say, see, Alan Johnson, your promotion is coming and this is the time it is going to happen. But we'll have to speak on the religious thing another day because, the pulpit pimps, the political prostitute, the parliamentary pirates, and us, the political prisoners. We'll have that conversation for another day. We can have a real conversation going forward. But now, let's come back to the economy for the 25th. So here it is that on the 25th, the law kicks in. And so you actually have to begin to bring people back to work. And if you don't bring them back to work, here's what happens. If you don't bring them back to work, you have to let them go and pay the benefits. You hear rumors about the hotels was negotiating with labor to only pay 4 weeks rather than the 4 years rather than the 12 years and the 8 years, whatever. People, whatever you do, do not quit your job. If you have to go, let them get rid of you. Do not quit your job. By quitting your job, you are foregoing your benefits. I've heard people inside of Bimini told me that they're getting phone calls that tells them, if you want to, just send us a letter, saying that you won't be coming back. That's their way of getting you to quit. You're entitled to certain benefits. Whatever you do not quit your job. Okay? So, and the reason why, if you quit your job, then you're not entitled to the benefits that's entitled to you. Just sit and wait, and let them make the decision from Atlantis and Bahama and the Point and wherever else. Let them decide what they want to do with you. Whatever you do not send no letter, no nothing saying I quit and you want to bring me back to work or whatever else. Sit and be patient. It is not going to change anything if you quit, except you're going to lose. Okay, that's it. But going back to what they did in the economy, yes, you have the economy that now you're going to have some people that's going to have to be restructured. Atlantis, Bahama, the Point, whatever hotels in Exuma and Bimini is never going to come back the way it is. You'll be surprised if 1/3 of the individuals is actually called back to work. Now, here's the thing. You've often heard me and other people said to you that digitization causes job loss. Yes. 50% of the jobs that we knew today was to disappear by the year 2025. But guess what? It didn't disappear in 2025. It disappeared now. The good thing that for you to understand, what people don't say to you when they talk about these jobs disappearing is the fact that there will be a net increase of jobs of 1.25 to 1.5. Let's use 1.5. So that means for every 2 jobs that disappears, 3 jobs reappears. What that means? The problem is the skill set that you had for those old jobs now requires you to have a new set of skill set. So all the skills that you thought you have is no longer valid. So what you have to do is you may have to up your skills, whether you go for entrepreneurship, for what is called home business ownership or whatever. So you could go from working to actually creating a job and a skill. Because no borders exist, you just have to understand now, let's use e-commerce as an example. How do you sell stuff that you don't have, the people that you don't know, for money that you never had? Want to make $2,000 in the year? Well, guess what? Find a product or service that you can sell on Amazon, this, whatever. We can talk about all of this. And just find 100 people out of the billions of people a month for you to make $20 from 100 people. That's your $2,000 a month. We're going to talk about doubling. So if you want to make $3,000 a month, well, let's find a product or service that you can sell. You see, we're not going to work on the so-called instant millionaire. We're going to work on what is called personal economic environment, personal economy. So you can have your own personal economy. And whether you have a skill, a service, or whatever it is, you can now sell it. Don't believe that you need to sell to thousands of people. You only need to sell to 20 people, 50 people, 100 people around the world, 200 people around the world, to put you in a position to take care of your family and your home as we rebuild this new economy. And so many of you probably don't take home $500 a week sitting at home, just understanding how to do this. There's not a lot of us, Literally speaking, it's not unreasonable to believe that 100,000 of us can easily enter into this green, orange, blue conceptual knowledge and digital economy. Just break that down. Let's say 120,000 of us. So that's 20,000 of us in each of those economy. Now let's use the hospitality economy, which would be the digital. It goes across them. What if we then break down the hospitality industries into 6 different things? So we already said we need 20,000 people in the hospitality. I'm just using this as an example. So now you need 20,000 people. But so if you break it into the subcategory of 5 categories from medical, health, cultural, whatever, tourism, well, we only need 5,000 in each of those. That's easy. So when you understand each of these economic models, you can go find sectors in each of those models and see how easy it is to put back 120,000 people to work like that. But you have to understand what it is. It isn't Googling the name. You have to understand how the mechanisms work. You remember just the example I gave you of the heart surgeon? I have a heart problem. 100 doctors can tell me what needs to be done. 25 can tell me how to do it, but only 2 can actually execute. Well, we have to find those. And so, yes, anybody can Google information and tell you, oh, we need to do this in this subcategory in the orange, and this subcategory in the green, and this subcategory in the blue, and this subcategory in the knowledge, and this subcategory in the digital. We already see. You tell me when you heard somebody who was talking about the green economy talk to you about agri-tech. They talking about backyard farming. Get a shower, get whatever, grow your thing. And you have people on the radio, and I have my own thing. That's not, no, that's personal. That's your personal economy. We're talking about a national economy. We all need to develop our own personal economy. We can have that conversation. Agri-tech allows you to grow your own cabbage, your carrots, and all those different things in a small footprint, because you're going to grow vertically using technology, which is less labor intensive as what they asking you to go dig something and dig in the rock and 2 inches of soil in your backyard and everything else. But we're going to talk about agri-tech for your own personal economy. And so I'm simply saying that these are 21st century concepts that we have to embrace. Okay, yes, you want to grow, if you could grow your own cabbage and your own carrot and your own lettuce and your own tomatoes and everything in a small area, learn a little small composting bin so that when you finish with those things, they become fertilizers, that you can utilize the sun and the aragonite and some nitrogen added to this and the trees that's going around. These are what in the technical minds allows you to utilize those resources around you. Literally, you're going to grow dirt and use water and whatever type of technology you want to use to maintain these yards. Okay, but we're going to have that conversation. But my point of the economy is now we have 100,000 individuals that is waiting for companies to call them back to work. But we are not hearing anybody being called to work because many of these businesses were not prepared for digital transformation. You have government talking about curbside service for the e-commerce. Okay, e-commerce is I pick up the phone, call you, drive by you, tell you what I need, you come outside, put it in the trunk of my car, then you take my credit card or I run inside the house, supposedly. Run inside the business, the signs. That's not e-commerce. But we're celebrating it. E-commerce is where for 15 years, I've not been to the US. But for 15 years, I've shopped and practically virtually live in the US where my family is. You don't see me driving up to no place in the US to pick up anything else. No, that's e-commerce. When I go to Alibaba, when I go to Walmart, when I go to eBay, when I go to Amazon, I don't drive to their warehouse and they come outside and take my credit cards and do this and that. That's not how it works. But we're going to fix that because we're going to find out from individuals that knows how it works and we're going to utilize their expertise. And that's what digital transformation is. This ad hoc things we're doing is not it. Please do not get lulled to sleep because that's what they're doing. They're lulling you to sleep with this story about we are making progress. We're trying to get back to 2010. The world has moved to 2030. We must build in the future so when they get there, they meet us there. Okay? And our demographics, again, is so small that we could achieve this in the shortest period of time. The Prime Minister has been waiting for 4 months now from some economic committee. He's supposed to be the brightest mind and business owners in our country. And 4 months later, as the world is moving, that's 4 years has passed. 4 digital years has passed since the Prime Minister has made an appointment to this committee. And what do we have? Nothing. They're going to bring us a blueprint. They're asking you to contribute ideas and not provide you any data. You have no idea. That's like me asking you, well, can you tell me how to patch this hole in the road in France? But you've never been to France. You don't even know the roads look like. But the government says, I would like your opinion. And you know what, that's right. Some of us crazy enough to run around and say, well, I would do this and I would get cold patch and I'll get this. And I'm saying to myself, you don't have sufficient information to make a recommendation. We are data averse in this country. How could you give an advice? You, with all due respect, you working as a bartender. Now you're going to tell them how to rebuild a hotel? No. But I believe that you have the confidence in you that you could rebuild where you work with your expertise. But please don't tell me that you're now going to tell the government how to reopen Atlantis, how to rebuild Atlantis. You don't have sufficient data to provide input. I don't. That's why I'm waiting to see what they say. And hopefully, I'm going to assume what they bring into us is built on data and then I can have an opinion. But please don't again. These are theatrics, linguistic gymnastics, and lyrical contortionism is a mastery of our political people. Linguistic gymnastics and lyrical contortionism from our leadership in the church, in politics, and in business. But guess what? COVID wiped that all clean. If we allow them to lull us back to sleep, we will perish. So it's time for the power of the people. The power of the people is and shall always be greater than the people we put in power. We're going to have some hard decisions to make in 2022 on who will lead us forward. Not from the past, but from the future. Future ideas. It has nothing to do with age. I can do a special thing on the youth argument. I'm going to have a special thing on that because that's a fallacy. That's a fallacious argument. When you look at the wealth in the world and you look at 10 or 20 or 30 people and say, oh, we, the youth, you know, if you have 2,700 billionaires in the world and only, 40 of them are under the age of 40, then how is it that you say youths are controlling the world? If you have 50 million millionaires in the world today or in America today, and less than 3, 4, 5 million of them are under 40, then how do you claim that youth doing everything? If 80% are still over 50, if 90% of the billionaires are over 50, where's this youth thing? Yes, youths have achieved some things, but we must look at the context for which they have achieved it. It wasn't because they were young. It was because of what they did. Okay? It wasn't youth, because you're already 70% of the population, and you have been quiet long enough that you're not allowed yourself to be inserted. And a couple of you who may have ambition greater than your ability wants to now say you want to lead. But there's leadership in all of us. It's just that we cannot go on the illusion of our ability. We have to go on the facts, on the ground. This is the tools you have to build with. Do you have the competence to build forward? Okay, now back to the economy. I keep going all of this. That's my problem. So much to say, so little time to say it. And this is why I'm going to spread this out. But now what happens is we must now look, and this is the crisis we are facing, because many of the businesses are trying to go back to what they were. They can't. Let's face it, 50% of us will not be going back to work. So what we should be doing? We should be demanding from our leadership, from the Minister of Social Services, the social safety net. Now, another sidebar, if 70% of the economy has disappeared, that would mean 70% of the income of the Bahamas has disappeared. So essentially, $8.5 billion of the economy, of a $12 billion economy, has disappeared. What is that $8.5 billion? That $8.5 billion is what? Light, phone, water, food, school fees, insurance, car payments, mortgage payments, health payments. That's what has disappeared. If you want to simply say $9 billion out of a $12 billion economy has disappeared, what do? We must rebuild it. Not look for, oh, I hope Atlanta's reopen and anything else. We need to have a strategy for what's now and what's next. In the shortest period of time, by the end of the year, because that $8 billion has disappeared, we're going to have a housing crisis, because landlords can want their money because the banks can be on them. And mortgages and homes are going to become due. That is literally a housing insecurity crisis. Well, if you don't have money for food, there has to be a strategy to feed your nation. $15 million, those are jokes. I just told you $9 billion disappeared. So how are you going to use $15 million or $50 million, whatever, to replace $9 billion? I just want you to tell me how you fill a $9 billion cup with $50 million or even $100 million. So we need a recovery strategy. We need to find out how to get money in the economy. The green economy, the orange economy, the digital economy, the conceptual economy, the knowledge economy, the blue economy, and the digital. I think I got them all. Let me say. It's the blue, the green, the orange, the knowledge, conceptual, and digital economy. All of those are net importers. They bring foreign currency in because we're sending knowledge out. We're sending digitization out. We're bringing people in to experience the orange economy, as well as we exporting the orange economy. And each time we do these things, it brings foreign currency in. We do the same thing for the blue economy. We have $1 trillion worth of fish in the sea and assets in the ocean, but we're not having access to them because we're not having conversation and context as to how to get to those things. Oh, we got aragonite. Oh, we got salt. Oh, we got whatever. We got oil. That's not how it's done. A structured, systematic approach for exploiting those resources has to happen. I see people, oh, we can do marijuana. Come on, man. You really believe smoking marijuana is going to replace $9 billion worth of income? Really? These are distractions. You can create $1 billion industry in the cannabis, hemp, or whatever industry you want, but it surely is not smoking it. How do you make legal what's already legal? First of all, marijuana is not illegal in the Bahamas. It's a controlled substance. So yeah, here the police, a former guy that's almost police chief, talking about he can make marijuana illegal. He doesn't know that marijuana is already legal in the Bahamas. Distractions. Personal economic models. We have to begin to look in these 6 different models. Where do I find my own personal economic model? How do I fit into the green economy? How do I fit into the blue economy? I want to do fishing. I want to exploit our blue resources. And it's from cruising to boating, to fishing, to mariculture, to all these different things within the sea. So it is no one specific thing. And believe it or not, Google University and YouTube College is an excellent starting point. And the expertise that you're missing, you buy it. Remember, you're not going to build $1 million company in the immediate. But if you had a $20,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 job, just for your own personal economy, let's look on how we're going to replace that. Let's just recreate your personal economy. And if you have a $20,000, let's all aim to recreate a $50,000 personal economy for each of our families. Because it's said that we need about $56,000 for the typical family of 4 that live in the Bahamas. So if we could just simply recreate a let's use a benchmark. If every house in the Bahamas could recreate a $60,000 economy for the household, then we would be secure. Once you remove the monkey off your back, you can now focus on building the Bahamas that you want. So we will look to say, how can each of us individually and collectively look on capitalizing on this? So we can look on, okay, how does 15,000 of us start a bed and breakfast for the new dispensation of the social distancing and whatever is going to happen? Who's going to come here to enjoy the ecotourism? Who's going to come here to enjoy the blue economy? Who's going to come here to enjoy the orange economy, which is cultural heritage and whatever else? So when we begin to look at the combination of these things, you could very see how you could find your own 60 people, 70 people per month or per week. Remember now, we got 7 million people coming here. You only trying to find your 60 every month, every week. So if you personally say, if 60 people come here, this is how I intend to benefit from it. And for those of you who may go strictly into the knowledge economy, where you're selling an idea, it don't have to be yours, you know. It is said that money is made in multiple ways. It says, let me fix this here. Oh, sorry. It says that OPM, OPI, and OPE. Okay? What do you mean by that? OPM and OPI means other people ideas, other people money, and other people efforts. Okay? And how this happens? You take somebody else's idea, you take somebody else's effort, and you use other people's money. Just another quick thing. Let's say, for instance, I want to sell LED TVs. I go on Amazon, I secure a supplier who would drop ship to whatever address I say. Let's pretend they're going to sell me the TV for $75. I decide I'm going to put this 32-inch TV for $99 on the internet. Mind you, you got 400 million people, almost 500 million people in North America, and just as many people in South America and the Caribbean. You got almost 1 billion people just for yourself. Okay? And you say, I'm going to put this TV I can find for $75, and they said they can ship it to this address for, including the drop ship, for $75. I go to Amazon or whatever, and I put the TV for $99. Forget, oh, I could get 150 for this, whatever. You're trying to go for volume. You're trying to move 100 of these per month. Okay, so you could make $2,500. So the person goes on Amazon, they go to PayPal, they buy the TV from you. They automatically pay you to PayPal for the $100. What you do is take the money they just paid you and go to the website or wherever of the other person, order the TV they order and put in their address. It's going to go there, drop shipping, it goes with your label as if though you mail it. So you get to keep $25. So the person pays you, you pay the company in China or whatever it is you're selling, and they ship the product to the people, and you keep $25. Well, let's do that 100 times. And now you have your $2,500. Any other product, you have a particular skill where somewhere in the Caribbean, we always talk about these other countries are less than us. Then why can't we just simply find out whatever skill set that you have that we can harness, and you teach it and you deliver it over the internet to wherever, somewhere. You're 100 people for $25 a month. You say, okay, they're too broke in this other country to afford this $100 I want. But the question is, so if they can't afford it for 100, why selling it for 100? Isn't it better to sell the same thing to multiple people, hundreds of people, 200 people at the same time? Okay, then now you have your money. If you want the bed and breakfast, I'm going to talk about this in details, because this is how we're going to, for the Sovereign Wealth Fund. I think what Sir Lyndon had with the People to People program and the bed and breakfast and the hotel corporation we destroyed, we need to bring that back as a Sovereign Wealth Fund and begin to build these assets and co-op with homeowners, so that within 7 to 10 years, a homeowner can have a house totally paid for, a bed and breakfast totally paid for. The Sovereign Wealth Fund would have gotten their monies back. And if the homeowner failed, Sovereign Wealth Fund owns the bed and breakfast. But what happens is, I don't see how you could fail if I was to give you a complete bed and breakfast, and you just pay back the Sovereign Wealth Fund, and the Sovereign Wealth Fund keeps the first right of refusal in buying it back, meaning that you can't sell it to anyone else except back to the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Because why? We give you the money to build it anyway. You're not going to take our money and build this bed and breakfast for you to make $100,000 a year, and some guy comes to you and say, I give you $500,000 right now, and you sell it to some foreigner. No, you'll have to sell it back to the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Okay, it's for your prosperity, for your wealth. Take the $100,000 a year you make and go start another business that you could sell, but you're not going to sell what we help you build. You can live in it till you die, no problem. And when you die, if the pastors could find a way, you let them tell you how to take it with you. So what I'm simply saying is that there's unique opportunities coming back, because the economy as we know it is dead. Only digitization, digitalization, digital transformation, and innovation is going to return this economy. Please do not stand around waiting for your jobs to come back. We need to rethink what it is that you're doing. What you need to demand is demand. This is we have to start as individuals and collective. Start demanding for a plan. We want to know the social safety net. What is government going to do about mortgages? What is government going to do about rent? And what is government going to do about feeding a nation? What is government going to do about creating a proper health environment? Because it makes no use to have all these things if you're going to die, if you're going to kill you. Then what are we going to do for education? We're going to talk about that thing with Jeff Lloyd. Please. No, don't do it. Don't do it. They're playing on your ignorance because you don't know. Okay, you shouldn't have to go buy no computers for your child. Okay, and the teachers should surely don't have to build no classroom in their house. That is government's responsibility. Okay, you don't need books because they're supposed to be digitized. What you need uniforms for? We just need to be able to have a method of identifying who our children are. Digital ID. Give them all digital IDs. Okay. Why are we going back to what doesn't exist anymore? Okay. And so if you have a digital hybrid or whatever type of environment, we could create this, but you cannot digitize an analog process. You can't. And that's what we're trying to do. And we're using fancy word. Every time the Ministry of Education hear a new word, they insert it. We're going to have virtual, digital, remote, all these type of learning. Each of them is a different one. They're not all the same. They're similar, but not the same. So are we having digital learning, remote learning, virtual learning, hybrid learning? Which one it is? Because you keep throwing all these names. Flam. They're flamming us. We need to have concrete. This is why you say, we don't want to hear you talk about it. Give us the paper so we can read it. You say you have a strategy for opening a school, publish it. Publish it. Listen to me. Ministry of Education can't even identify the students who disappeared in Abaco, okay? They can't. I dare somebody to call me wrong on this. Do you know dozens, if not or more, kids died in that storm? They don't even know who's missing. Ministry of Education cannot tell you who is missing, how many of the students in Abaco is missing. You can't. I dare somebody to call me a liar. Challenge you. You can't, because you all keep records school by school, not no central database or anything else of that sort. I've been studying us. I live in this house. Just because I don't make any noise don't mean I don't know what's going on in the next room. Okay, please don't insult my intelligence. I'm simply saying we need to get real in how we exist. This is our house. Let's not put things in the closet and sweep it under the carpet. Because no matter what, you imagine me putting the dirt in the carpet and sweeping under, it's still in our house. Let's clean house. We are in economic trouble. So what do we need? Let's demand a social safety net that covers housing, that covers education, that covers health, and that covers food. We need a comprehensive strategy. How do we feed 200,000 people? Because like I told you, it's not going to be instant in this transition. And so if we have a workforce of 125,000 people, 225,000 people, and we could roughly estimate 100,000 of these jobs gone. Not in the same thing. For you guys in the public service, I got news for you. You know how they say IMF, it's minutes fault? When the IMF come, they're not friend of yours. I've told you over and over again, based on my estimate, we could run the entire country, including all government agencies and government corporations, with 7,500 people. Don't take my word for it. And if you don't get this fixed by the time the IMF reach, they're going to tell you yourself. And then you'll say, oh my God, see, Alan was right about that too. Because technology creates an environment that most of y'all don't need. So you need to have a conversation before they come for you. I'm saying to you, you know how they say the expression, when they came for the Jews, I said nothing. When they came for the Italians, I said nothing. When they came for the Gypsies, I said nothing. When they came for me, no one was left. Okay, sit there thinking you're safe and secure. It's time for you to say something, because the government ain't gonna fire you, the economy will. Unless some income comes into this economy, the government can't borrow another $1 billion to pay your salary, because the government depends on revenue to pay back those loans. We're up to $10 billion, or maybe up to $12 billion if we look all of the hidden money we have. We are already at 100% debt to ratio. These are the truths that we have to have. So that's maybe the next thing we have to add. The social safety net is to tell us the truth of what we owe, who we owe, how much we owe, and what are the terms of what we owe and what we spend it for. These are things we have to ask. Abandon the red, the yellow, and the green. Adopt the flag, the Bahamas, Bahamians. It is the only means for us to recover our country. If we have to take back our country, I'm asking you to put yourself first. I'm asking you to put your family first. I'm asking you to put your children first and your grandchildren, especially you older folks. You love to run to the Bible. Let me tell you what the Bible says. A wise man, man and woman, leaves an inheritance for their children's children. What are you leaving for your grandchildren? What have you left if you was to close your eye tonight for them? A national debt. It's not a wise person. So don't run to me with what the Bible says if you can't follow that simple principle. Why? Because your loyalty is to political parties. Please. They say, take the mote out of your own eyes before you tell me about what's in mine. And, you know, for people, and I love this people, let me tell you something, right? This is nice. I always hear people say, the pot called, let me just do these two things. And, you know, I'm going to try to wind up. The pot called the kettle black, right? It's a, what's the word called? Oh boy, it's a word for like what the story means. But anyway, we always use the pot calling the kettle black. We never understand what it means. Here's what it means in its true statement. The pot and the stove, the pot and the kettle were sitting on the stove. And as you know, for the cast iron pot, the pot was pitch black, but the kettle was made of the silver metal. And everybody from those days used to keep the kettle polished. nice and shiny and silver. So one day the pot looked over at the kettle and started laughing, saying, "Oh, you're so black and covered with soot." And the kettle calmly answered, "It is not me you see, but your reflection in me, because I'm nicely polished and shiny." So when the pot was calling the kettle black, it wasn't calling the other person black. It was calling it, it was beginning to see its own fault. The kettle was a shiny object like a mirror because it was kept nice and clean. The pot saw itself. So that's what they mean by the pot calling the kettle black. It meant that the kettle is without blemish or pristine, and the pot seeing itself in that image, being shined back at them, attacks the image that they see, which is nothing more than themselves. Then there's another thing that we use, this black crab syndrome. It's the most asinine thing I've ever heard. It is just a black crab syndrome, just like behemoths. Like, you ain't a goddamn behemoth. So you saying you're a crab? I mean, you fit the definition, but you need to start saying what you are. You should need to say, well, I fit what I think is the black crab syndrome, because you can't speak for all behemoths. Oh, behemoths went to Miami. Really? Tell me when 400,000 of us went to Miami. Tell me how many of us have passports. Oh, behemoths, we know we lazy. Oh, behemoths, we always late. You always late. What you mean we? When you got a permission to speak for we? When did he give you authority to speak for we? Pot calling the kettle black. Oh, black crab syndrome. Let me ask you a question. How many of you went and seen crabs in a natural environment, climbing on each other's back, pulling each other down, and all these things you say happen? The only time you see that is when crabs are in a cage. Have you ever taken the time to think that it's not the crabs, it's the cage? How do you speak the language of the crabs to ask the crabs? Are you trying to help those others up, and the weight of them pulls you back down? You assume the crab is being pulled down. No, the crab is reaching down and said, I'm going to climb up, and then you all hold on me, and I'm going to try to carry as many of us. But the weight of so many of them pulls him back down. So they're not pulling each other down. They're trying to escape as a collective. Every now and then, a hand comes in and take one out, and you think the crab is free. You go into somebody's pot. That's what we have to come. So I want you to stop for a minute and think. If you see us trying to help each other and we're falling down, and I'm standing on somebody's back or somebody standing on my back trying to get out, it isn't their nature. It's the cage. It says that you're not in your natural environment. Because in your natural environment, the crabs don't have to stand on each other's back. The crabs don't have to pull up, or whatever definition you want to use. The problem is when you start saying, oh, behemoths are acting like black crabs, stop talking with the crabs and say what you're going to do about removing the cage. Cut open that cage and see how many of those crabs pull each other down or stand on each other's back or whatever you want to call it. Garbage, but they got you repeating it. Notice how they keep having you repeat things all over the context. Uncle Tom, Uncle Tom was the guy that tried to free the slaves, but they got you believing that Uncle Tom is the one that tells. Uncle Tom is actually, go read the story. Uncle Tom is the one that the master hated, because he was the one that always challenged the master. But they got you believing that he's an Uncle Tom, he tells. That's not how the story goes. You see how they could change the narrative and you repeat shit without knowing what it means, and you change it to what you want. But those are different stories. But back to the economy again, please. The economy has changed forever. 50% more of the jobs are gone. Our government is in crisis, economic crisis. 70% of our economy is gone, meaning that the government revenue is down 70%. So the things that you expect for school and policemen and all these things are not being able to be paid for. But the solution is in all of us. It requires all of us as a collective to have a conversation as to what's now and what's next. So we just have to begin. What the immediate is, it's hard for you to listen to me and for us to have a conversation about rebuilding the Bahamas if you're hungry, if you're homeless, if you're unhealthy, if your children have nowhere to prepare themselves through education. So let's ask the government, really, which now, which is the social safety net, and what's next, and that's the new Bahamas. I've extended my hand to government. It only requires them now to take it, to extend theirs. The problem is, my intent is not to strengthen the oppressor. It's always my intent to arm the rebels. Yeah. That's why I work with whatever political party or whatever I see as an opportunity. Let's arm the rebels of change. That's what each one of us. If each one of us, I invite you to go to the arlencjohnson.com, like the page that you're watching this video on, and share it. Tell your friends. Send your questions. Let's have a conversation. And I'm going to take my time, hopefully not spend as long as I did today, and give each of you a breakdown. I'm going to take this weekend, and we can still talk tomorrow, probably around 3 o'clock. I'm going to take my time and break down the subjects into bite size so that you could share. Sorry, we're talking too long tonight, but I just wanted you to get the reality of where we are. We in crisis. We are in up Schitt's Creek without a paddle, about to hit Hurricane Ben. Yes, it's bad. No mind, we don't want to tell you. It says that you cannot manage what you cannot measure, and you cannot measure what you refuse to acknowledge. We must acknowledge the position our country is in and seek to measure it so we can manage it. You cannot manage what you cannot measure, and you cannot measure what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot manage what you cannot measure, and you cannot measure what you refuse to acknowledge. So let's begin to acknowledge our position so we can measure what it is that we have to do and seek to manage it. I hope I covered enough subjects. I thank you all. Please, I will set a time every day to come on and be more consistent. Most likely it will be at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. every day. And you don't have to watch me live. Just come and share the video and watch what I have to say afterwards, and send your questions. I'll check the notes and what is being said and everything, following the live broadcast to see what questions I can answer. My WhatsApp phone number is 443-7189, 443-7189. My business WhatsApp is 825-9300. So my personal WhatsApp is 443-7189. My business WhatsApp is 825-9300. I'll see as much business advice as I could begin. So essentially, these are going to be my personal conversation video to you. And I'm going to begin some separate broadcasts at another set time of the day. So I'm going to be spending a lot of camera time because I'm going to talk about the business aspect. And so look for my Sand Dollar Communications and my Sand Dollar Business Solution pages. I'm going to make sure that they are on part of my arlencjohnson.com. And so that you could basically get insight on what is it you need to do to create your own personal economic model so that we all can get out of this safely. We all can get out of this fiscally sound, and we can have the wherewithal as a collective to overcome the obstacles that are facing us as a country. Politics is not going to get us out of this. Religion is not going to get us out of this. Religion is a man-made construct, okay? Relationship is a God thing. They have you praying to God. You can imagine if I'm in a crowd, I know people say anything. I'm in a crowd and I said, hey, 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 hey. God has a name. If you don't call me by my name in a crowd, I don't know you talking to me. So this abstract of talk to God. God who? My sheep knows me. I know that. That's what he does. He knows who have a personal relationship with him. You don't need no speaking in tongues and hallelujah, whatever. What you need is a relationship. That there is religion. And religion is not going to get us out of this. Relationship with God will. Thank you so much, Bahamas. Oh, leadership will get us out of this. Now, that's another thing we can talk about. We can talk about leadership. So I thank you, Bahamas, for joining me. And thank you once again. And hopefully we can continue this conversation. Follow the pages. arlencjohnson.com will give you all of my contacts that is necessary. Like and follow the page, and let's change the Bahamas. Let's build better Bahamas. Thank you once again. Good night, demons. I love you all. I love my country. Put God first. Remember I said put family first and everything? You put God first in whatever name you call it. That's the relationship. Then you put family, which is your security, and then country. But we can have them almost so close that it's slightly teared. It's very hard for the sea. But if we combine God, family, and country, you'll be amazed at what we can do. Thank you once again.